All right. Well, welcome everybody in. Uh, you're right here on my screen, but hello. Um, Hope you're all having a good night, good evening, a brighter evening, thanks to the lovely daylight savings time, which I know we all love so much. Um, we get to enjoy light for a lot longer. Although I don't know about you guys, but it always messes with me because I get used to how dark it gets by like 5, 6 o'clock. It feels like the evening, it feels like the end of the day. But now with daylight savings time, it's just like it's light for so long that it's like 6:30 and it still feels like it's like 3 in the afternoon. And I want it to be darker. I want to get ready. I want to wind down. But that's just me. Looks like everybody is in that was in the waiting room. So welcome everybody. Welcome to the DaVinci Resolve workshop here at CMAC. I am your one of your hosts, I guess co-host Jeff. And to my left, I believe, is
Dom. Hello, everybody.
we never rehearse this, so it's always just off the cuff. But yeah. So today we're going to be going over DaVinci Resolve. It's going to be a very basic workshop, probably honestly almost just an overview. We'll go through how to do some basic editing, some of the basic features that Resolve has, and that'll be that. Some things that we're not going to go over in Resolve, in case you were wondering, and if you're already familiar with Resolve, we're probably not going to go over Fusion that much. Mainly because Fusion is like its own thing that would take a whole nother workshop to go over. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know much about Fusion because I use After Effects, which is kind of DaVinci Resolve's equivalent. So we won't be going over much of Fusion. We'll show the interface, kind of go over what it is. And also same with the cut page. We probably won't do that as much either, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Dom, is there anything you want to say? Dom, what is CMAC? For those who don't know, we forgot to do that last time. So what is CMAC?
Yeah, so if it's your first time in a workshop, or at least the first time with Jeff and myself, I am the membership coordinator here at CMAC. So basically my job is, back in a normal day of CMAC before COVID hit, meet and greet people here at the front desk. I'm in charge of a lot of admin tasks. I'm in charge of making reservations for our field equipment and also in-house services. And that's just kind of like the rough thing of what I do. But CMAC, yeah, we're a nonprofit media center. Basically, we teach people the basics of video production so that people such as yourselves can tell your own stories. So if you want to create a talk show, learn video editing like today, how to create a short film, documentary, things like that. We're here to teach you those basic skills, and you have the tools that we provide at no additional charge on top of the membership fee. You can create your own content on your own. And then we'll also air on our public access channels. We have 3 of them: the public, education, and government. And it's kind of CMAC in a nutshell. I can spend another 30 minutes just going into a lot more specifics, but I don't want to take up too much of the workshop's time today. But yeah, that's a little bit of that. And then Jeff, he's our production assistant. He's one of 2. Jeff, I'll let you do your spiel. I don't want to take that away from you.
Yeah. Also, I know it's really loud. Just give it a second. When I start talking, it's going to go down. It's going to figure out where it needs to be. And there we go. That's probably a Zoom setting that I can mess with. But yeah, so if Dom's talking and then I start talking, it's going to be really loud for a minute. I know, and I apologize. But yeah, I'm Jeff. I'm one of the production assistants at CMAC. And my main role is kind of checking equipment in and out to our members, and then also just assisting them with anything they need help with. And then also just these workshops and other production stuff. It's really a flexible role. I'm all over the place, and I'm also not that interesting of a person. So we'll go ahead and move along. I had something that I was going to mention, and it is gone. So, oh yeah. Feel free throughout this workshop, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type it in the chat, or just go ahead and pop in and be like, hey, real quick, before you move on, I want to know about this or that. There's no guarantee that we will have a great answer for that question, but we will try to answer it to the best of our abilities. This is meant to be kind of an open dialogue here. So, we are presenting to you, but also this is a workshop. So we want you to learn. And if you have any questions, please ask us so we can answer those questions. The chat is probably the best way, but also if you got a microphone, just pop in and be like, hey, I want to know this at any time. And we'll pause here and there as well, just to pause for questions. So if you want to hold on to your questions until that point, that would work as well. But I think that's it. I think we've wasted a good part of 5 minutes, so we can go ahead and get into what you all hopefully came here for, which is definitely not our humor, because doesn't exist. All right, I'm going to share my screen and hope that it works. I actually didn't test this beforehand. Let me get the screen. All right, it's going to go crazy. Whoa. Okay. There we go. So you should see the desktop here. So with DaVinci Resolve, I guess I should actually just start by saying what is DaVinci Resolve? I mean, if you're here, you probably know, but maybe not. DaVinci Resolve is basically a non-linear editor. And one of the great things about DaVinci Resolve is that the basic level is free. It doesn't cost anything. There is a paid version, but the only difference is some features here and there that you don't have access to. But the free version is still a full-fledged editing software, very similar to Adobe Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro. It is on both Windows and Mac, so if you are running either operating system, you're good to go. But yeah, it is totally free and really feature rich for being free. It's not like one of those softwares where it's like, oh yeah, it's free, but you got to pay to get really any of the awesome features. No, I don't know about you, Dom, but I know personally I've never felt in the free version hindered by the fact that it was free, by the features that it has. You can do, I would say, practically anything that you could do in Premiere or Final Cut, you can do in DaVinci Resolve, and even in the free version. So yeah.
Yeah, even for me, when I used to actively use the free version, it had everything that I needed. I rarely used Fusion at all, just because I wasn't doing a lot of like special effects or anything like that. It was more just generic importing stuff, cut up video stuff, put in photos, PNGs and whatnot, rearrange things, like all the basic stuff that pretty much everyone would need to do at some point in an edit, right? Special effects is just more specialized, and that was something I don't personally mess with that much. And yeah, I was really content with it. Now I do personally own the paid version, and that has a few bonus things, as Jeff alluded to already, which are nice, but it's not really necessary. But before we really get started with the user interface and all that stuff, Jeff, I think it would really be beneficial to show where people can get DaVinci Resolve.
I was thinking the same thing. So where we can get it? Can I hide this little sharing menu? Probably.
All right, oh, sorry, real quick. Someone's asking how many I'm assuming lines of video and audio does the free version offer? Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't think there's a limit. At least I have never reached that limit personally. So yeah.
Yeah, because even like today, I installed DaVinci Resolve on a work computer, and it said something about the new version could support thing like 2,000 audio tracks. That's pretty beefy with that alone. So in theory, it could be 2,000 video tracks in itself. I don't know why you would really need to go that far, but you can keep adding stacks and stacks of those tracks.
Yeah.
It drops frames really badly when you go up to that limit, that maximum.
Yeah, basically the more things you're trying to process in real time, it's going to bog down on everything.
DaVinci 17, and it has 100 video tracks, and yeah, right, that number you just said about audio tracks is correct. I just did a new timeline in Bin. I just because I'm trying to learn how to close and open my, because I work at my voice media center, and I'm trying to learn how to just open and close a project. Mm-hmm. Rather than just get right into the the little windows of the timeline,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this microphone and peaking when I start talking, it's terrible. All right, but if you want to get DaVinci Resolve as the mic calms down, go ahead and go to blackmagicdesign.com. If you just look up Blackmagic Design, you should see DaVinci Resolve right here. You can also just type in Blackmagic Design DaVinci Resolve, or just DaVinci Resolve into Google, and you'll find the download pretty easy. And then here you can just download it. It's free. You can download it for your operating system. And yeah, they have multiple different versions that you can download. I believe when you launch it, it'll ask you if you have a code for the security version.
To register, yep.
Yeah.
Just register.
Yeah. So if you there is the paid version, the studio version. I believe it's $300. And mainly what that gets you is some cool effects here and there. And I think that's mainly it. Just a lot of good effects and what's what I'm looking for?
Effects and rendering.
Yeah. So nothing that if you're just making
0.0.
basic videos that you really need. I mean, Dom and I got away with the free version for a long time. So it really just depends on what you're editing at that point. But we'll get to that a bit later. But yeah, this is where you get it. It's free. If you want to download it right now to try and follow along, you can. But otherwise.
Yeah, and then just for you guys to be aware, Jeff, go back to the download button. On the left, you'll see DaVinci Resolve 17 and DaVinci Resolve 16.2.8. 17 is the latest version that came out. It came out of beta recently, and then the 16, that's the previous version. Basically, if you don't want to, go to the 17 just yet, they're giving you the option to start a little bit on an older model. You're not really losing anything. It's just some visuals are going to be somewhat different, but you're overall, you're going to have the same program. So don't worry about which version should you get. You're getting the same program overall.
Yeah, and today we will be working in DaVinci Resolve 17, the free version. But if you did pay for it, you can go ahead and do that.
But the beta can break your computer.
So it's out of beta.
Break your computer, sir.
If maybe, yeah, in some instances, but for Jeff and I, like I said, we both have the DaVinci Studio 17, and it's already out of beta, and we haven't experienced any issues whatsoever. Maybe some crashes, but that kind of goes with any editor. Like Premiere is notorious for that. But so far so good. That's just us personally. That doesn't mean it wouldn't happen for anyone else. But so far so good, at least for us.
Yeah, you should be good with just the full release right here. Those are generally pretty stable, but yes, beta versions or like 17.1 is going to be more unstable than 17. So, all right, let's get into the actual software here. So when you load up DaVinci Resolve for the first time, you're going to be met with, you might actually be met with a screen that asks you to choose where your database goes. So when we launch a program, we're greeted with this splash screen right here, and this is where we select what project we want to go into. Unlike, say, like Premiere Pro, where a lot of times you would just click on the project file, DaVinci Resolve, you go through the program itself to choose what project you want to open. And then we have our database right here, which is where the project is actually stored. And we can export or import databases and projects as we want. But let's say we want to create a new database. So this is where all of the projects are going to be stored. We can change the thumbnail. We can change the name. We'll just call this guy Workshop. And then we'll browse on any hard drive that we have. I guess we'll just do it right here. Why not? It might not let me. And then create, and it's empty folder. Workshop database. Let's see if it'll let me do it in there.
That's what I'm saying. I need to know how to open and close a timeline, a project, and get going on this.
Yeah, so here we have our database. So this is where we have our specific workshop database. It'll create a project by default, but if you wanted to create a new project, we would just go ahead and hit new project right here. You can also organize your projects into folders. So if we hit new folder, we'll just call this new. Now we have a new folder. If we go into that folder, we can create new projects within this folder. It's all organization, right? But then let's say we have a project that we stored on another hard drive. We can go ahead and go back to our other database, and then it'll have its own set of separate projects. Generally, you should be good with just the default database, but if you're getting into different storage spaces, or even what I've done is whenever I update my program to the next version, I'll create a new database for that specific version, just so if something breaks, I know my previous projects are still good and locked in the prior version of Resolve. You don't have to do that. That's just a little bit of a safety net right there. But all right, so to create a new project, we'll hit new project down here, and I'm just going to call this project workshop and create. And then now it actually opens up the program. And by default right here, we're in the cut tab. So let me look at my notes, kind of go. All right, so the first thing we're going to go over in our project here is some of these settings up at the top here. Under DaVinci Resolve, you can go under preferences. You may or may not have to edit this. It's just miscellaneous preferences about the program itself. I've never really had to mess with this, but if you want to, you can. A cool thing here is you can actually link some of your social media accounts like YouTube, Vimeo, and Twitter. And later on, I'll show you when you go to export your video, you could have it just export directly to one of these sites. It streamlines the process a lot. If that's something that you want to do. But generally, we won't really have to mess with these. You can change like how much memory, like how much RAM your DaVinci Resolve can use. The more RAM you give it, the better it's going to perform. But that also doesn't leave a lot of RAM for other applications that you're running on your computer. Good rule of thumb is if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you have no idea what it does, don't touch it, because it's probably fine.
Can I ask a question to troubleshoot?
Sure, what's up?
Can I share a screen real quick?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, how do I close my project?
So if you want to close your project, at least on mine, there is an X up at the top right that should close it. If not, you can go to DaVinci Resolve up here and then hit quit DaVinci Resolve.
So the X, I'm going to do that. Don't save project. Okay, and then to open a new project that's already. Okay, hold on, wait a second. It just closed the whole program. It just shut down the whole program.
Right, so quit DaVinci Resolve or even that X will close the whole program. If you want to open a new project, you're going to have to open DaVinci Resolve again, go on that little splash screen, and then yeah, and then go ahead and find your project or create a new one. But all right, what's the next thing I want to cover? I think it was the files. Yeah, so up at the file here, you can actually create a new project straight from here.
Okay, I got it, sir. I got it, sir.
Awesome. So you can create a new project up here, new timeline. You can save the project as if you want to save a new version of it. You can import, export. The main thing that we want to look at here is actually the project settings. So this is where you're going to edit things like your resolution, your frame rate. It's a good rule of thumb to edit these settings before you actually import any of your footage. I'm not sure if they fixed this in 17, but I know in 16, once you import footage, these settings right here are locked, so you can't really edit them. It's a weird quirk of Resolve. But anyways, so here you can change your resolution, your frame rate. Let's just do like 29.97 or 30 frames per second. Video monitoring, all of these are fine. We kind of just want to mess with timeline format right here. Image scaling, we can go ahead and see how we resize our images. One thing that I like to do is on input scaling. So if there's a mismatch in your resolution, so let's say you have a video file that, like, the main timeline is in 16:9 aspect ratio, but you have a piece of video that is 4:3 or 2.35:1. This determines how it will scale that mismatched resolution. So we can either center it with no crop, we can scale it to the full frame, make the entire image fit, or stretch it. These are all just different ways to scale that image automatically. You can change this per clip later on during editing, but this is the way that it'll automatically do it for the entire project. And yeah, just some other settings here that you are free to browse in the program. Most of these you won't have to do anything with, but they are here for you if you want to change them. All right. And then these are just various other settings that you can use throughout the editing process. And a lot of these you can actually just find on the toolbar, which we'll get to later. Just various settings for how you want things to look. Dom, I know I was talking to you earlier about the workspace page. So this can, you can switch to these specific pages right here, or you can do that down here, and we'll get to what all these do in a moment. You can have dual screen. So if you have 2 monitors, you can actually split this program up between those 2 monitors. Gives you a bit more space to work with, a bit more real estate there. You can also full screen it, and these various other settings, which we won't go through all of them because that will take the entire 2 hours. And we don't got time for that. All right. So we'll start here in the media tab. This is where you'll want to start the whole process of editing. This is where you are going to import all of your beautiful footage. All right, so at the top here is where we have our folders on our computer, and then down here are our folders in the program. So what we can do, for instance, is we can right click, we can add a new bin, and I'm gonna just do video. So this is where all of our clips are going to go. So now up here at the top, I want to go and find the folder with my video clips. In this case, I have it on the desktop, and that's going to be, I had it somewhere. Where was it? Users, here one, and then desktop. And then I have all of my footage in DaVinci Workshop. So I can either just drag and drop one clip. You can even see if you hover over it, actually. Good point right here. When you import footage, if it's at a different frame rate and resolution, DaVinci will ask you if you want to change the system or the project settings to match that particular piece of footage. We can go ahead and change that, and now the entire project will be at the same resolution and frame rate as this clip that we imported. Anyways, back to the point that I was making before, if you hover over the video clip, you can actually just kind of scrub through it. I'm not clicking anything. I'm just moving my mouse over the thumbnail, and you can see it and hear it if there's audio. But let's just go ahead and select all of these. I can either click and drag or just click, hold shift, and then go down to the last clip. It'll select everything between, and then I'll drag and drop it down there. Cool. So now all of my video clips are imported. You can do this with any other assets that you have, whether it be audio, any other clips that you've got. And you can create as many bins as you want to. One thing I do want to show you is actually down here. It's the smart bins thing. So smart bins are really good if you want to create bins with specific properties, let's say. So if I go ahead and right click down here, I can add a smart bin. I can name the smart bin whatever I want. We'll just leave the name by default. And then down here, we can change the properties that we're looking for. So let's say I want to look for media pool properties. We want to look for clips by their file name, and then contains. And let's say, I don't know, let's find anything that has the name video in the file name. So basically, again, what this is saying is we're looking at the media properties. We're looking specifically at the file name. We want it to contain, and then the word video. And if we hit create, if we look at Smart Bin 1, it actually did all of them because all these guys have video in it. But let's change this up a little bit. Let's go to edit, and let's try and make it more specific. What if I just do 1? Because they don't all have a number 1 in them. And you can see we only have video clips that have number 1 in their title. So this is really useful, especially if you're really organized with your clips already with how they're stored. You can just look them up based off of that. And we have other settings here that we can look at, right? A lot of stuff dealing with the metadata. So we can do, like if we edited the metadata and we want to do footage that was shot on a specific camera. So let's say you check out some equipment at CMAC and you check out a Sony X70 and a Canon M50, and you want to create a bin that only has footage from the X70, you can actually go in here, be like, I want to search for camera, the camera type contains, and then whatever the name of that camera was. You'll have to go in and edit the metadata on every clip to input that info, I believe. Sometimes it's inputted automatically. So it's a bit more work, but you can do that if you absolutely want to. And yeah, I think that's mainly it with smart
So
bins.
it's like a filter?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like a filter? Okay.
Basically, yeah, and it's going to automatically create these folders based off of the filter that you put in there.
Like in Access, it would be a query, like a make table, like some sort of select table or some sort of, right?
Sure, yeah.
In Access, where you get to like, use a select table or what other tables are there? There's like select table. There's.
Yes, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, I thought I see it out there in the industry in Office Depot, and I'm like, okay, call it out.
Yeah, so smart bins are a really good way.
I know what you're talking. I know it doesn't count. It doesn't count. I'm not grading it. I'm just trying to learn how to be good at editing so I can not worry about it. You see what I'm saying about how to be good at it,
Yeah, and totally got it. I'm trying to find here there's a thing called power bins, and power bins are really cool because power bins basically go between every project that you have in DaVinci. So if I can find where to add it. Anyways, so if you add a power bin, basically you can create like a library of, let's say, sound effects, right? So you have this power bin that is just sound effects. When you open a new project in DaVinci Resolve, that folder will be in that new project automatically. They just go across all of your projects. So it's a really neat way to have, like, if you, let's say you make YouTube videos, right? And you have an intro and an outro that you put at the beginning and end of every one of your videos. You can put that video clip in a power bin, and then every time you create a new project, you'll always have that footage there instead of having to re-import it and create a new folder every time. All right, so let's go ahead and create a timeline. So we'll go in our video here.
So
we'll
in the power bin, you'll be able to what now again, real quick?
So the power bin basically goes across every project. So imagine if I made a power bin of a video, it'll go across every single project, and I will have that video available in every project.
So it's kind of like the Apple magnifying glass tool. It searches all of your content.
Kind of, yes. It is a folder that is available on every project.
Okay, for all the assets.
Yes.
For all your assets. Okay.
All right. So if we right click over this clip, we can use create new timeline using.
So say you
selected
updated
clips.
a website daily, you would say the logo would be your power bin, your logo, right? Your introduction of your minutes served. If it was a Senate meeting, right? You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure about that. No.
It wouldn't be some sort of protocol, some sort of like daily, I'm talking some sort of like really snazzy website like in Seattle, and be like, okay, well, we're gonna put 97.9 FM, for our radio station, and then we're gonna show, our host, like Sway in the morning with hip hop, and then doing a really cool shout out to Seattle, and then cut to our interview,
So like, let's say that I created a power bin that had this burning charcoal video in it, right?
That's what I'm
This
saying.
video clip would be available on every project that I create in DaVinci Resolve.
Okay, got it.
So we'll right click and we create a new timeline using selected clips. We can go ahead and name it. I'm just going to keep it timeline 1 to keep it simple. You can actually go to use project settings is checked, but if we uncheck it, we can actually go in and manually change the resolution and the frame rate of this specific timeline. And then again, how it scales, kind of like those preferences that we looked at before. You can go ahead and change that specifically for this timeline. Let's go ahead and create. And now we can see the timeline right here. I'm actually just going to click and drag this over to master. So now if we click on master, you see we have our video folder and then we have our timeline. This just organizes it a bit better, keeping our timeline separated from our video clips. All right. Next tab down here is we have cut. So what these tabs are down here, I didn't touch on this earlier. They're basically like different stages of the editing process. You can think about them as like focused areas of the editing process. If you're familiar with the Adobe suite, this is kind of like all of these different Adobe suite programs put into just tabs, right? So we would have our Premiere Pro, which is our edit. We would have our After Effects, which is Fusion. We would have Color, Fairlight, which is like Adobe Audition, and then Deliver, which is like Adobe Media Encoder. If you don't know what any of those are, don't worry. That's basically what these tabs are. Not exactly. I would say this is almost like a jack of all trades sort of scenario where it's like, you know, Fairlight doesn't entirely replace Audition, but it still acts as like that audio processor.
Yeah, another way you can think about them is that they're essentially just workspaces where you're focusing on a specific task in your edit. So media is kind of like your setup for the project. You want to import your footage. Edit is where you're going to do all the main cutting, splicing, rearranging things. If you're looking for more of the special effects of the program, that's under Fusion. If you're going to do any kind of color grading or color correction, that's under Color. So it just organizes into specific sections. And if you're familiar with Premiere Pro, it has essentially the same kind of workspaces, but instead of the bottom, it's on the top of the window. That's really what it is, what those things are at the bottom. And then you'll kind of notice too, as Jeff, go ahead and slide through the different workspaces, that the program is switching how everything is looking. So Color is going to give you specific options versus Fairlight versus edits. So keep in mind, it's going to change throughout your whole project workflow, depending on what it is what you're going to do. And it doesn't mean that you have to use all of them for any specific project. It's up to you what you want to do. For example, I already said earlier that up until a while ago, I really didn't use Fusion because I never really needed it. The edit tab and maybe Color and Fairlight is all I really used, and I was happy with that. If you wanted to use Fairlight, or anything else, that's completely up to you.
Yeah. So what we're in right now is the cut tab. So this is basically where we can make some basic cuts to our clips. If we go up here, this is our media pool, which we can toggle up here if we do or don't want to see it. I guess it's going to be on here right now anyways. We can add effects to our videos right now, transitions, but we'll do all of these in the edit tab. Right now, I just kind of want to show off basically what the cut tab does. I know Dom and I don't personally use this tab as much because anything that you can do in the cut tab, you can do in the edit tab. But what we can do, for instance, is let's go to video. Let's take this lovely video right here. And we can actually go ahead and click and drag down here to change where that start point is. I believe with this marker right here, we can also hit O and it'll be our out point. And then if we click and drag, we bring it down to the timeline and it'll snap and it'll create a new track with those in and out points in mind. It'll move. There we go. So if we play.
In and out. Can you do that one more time? Can you show that one more time? Can you delete real quick and show that one more time, your ins and outs?
Yeah, so what I can do is I'll just take this other clip right here. So you go ahead and double click it, and then you'll see it up here.
Yes.
And then there's this bar right here. You can either click and drag the beginning, or you can hit I is your in point, and then O is your out point. What we can also do is...
Okay.
Instead, we can go
or you
over.
can just drag and drop into your timeline, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We can also go down here and we can just snip it. And it created two separate clips. Let's say we didn't want this end portion here. We would just click it and delete it. But that's all that this tab really does. It's just about taking your footage, shortening it, cutting the ins and outs, and putting it in the timeline. But you can also do that in the main tab that we're going to spend most of our time in, which is the Edit tab. And you can see, based off of what I did in the Cut tab, it's reflected here in the Edit tab. So this is going to be the interface that's most familiar if you've used any other editor. This is going to be your main timeline portion where you're adding in audio clips and where you're adding in video clips, adding certain transitions and effects to those. So let's go over some of these tabs up here real quick. So we have the media pool, which is this right here. If we go ahead and click media pool, it hides the media pool, giving us more room for our timeline and then our two windows here. This window on the right is our actual timeline. So you'll see here, if I just go ahead and play this, it's reflecting what's down here in the timeline. This window right here is like our clips window. So it's going to display whatever clip we have clicked and allow us to preview it right there. We also have our effects library tab, which will go down here at the bottom. And this is where we have a lot of our video transitions, our general effects, our titles, all of those sorts of things. We won't worry about edit index or sound library. We'll go actually all the way over here on the right. We have our mixer, which is going to give us our audio levels here on the right. And Zoom is kind of in my way here. But this is where we can see our audio meters. So if we play, we can see those audio meters jumping up and down. We can adjust the volume of each of our audio tracks. Right now, there's only one. But if we had more than one audio track, this is where we can adjust the volume. The
only way to increase audio is to move the line in the green.
You can do that as well. That'll be for each specific clip. So yeah, that is another way you can edit audio. There's this bar right here in the center. If we go ahead and lower it or raise it, this is another way of increasing audio, but this is only going to do it for that specific clip. So let's say, I actually don't know if any of the other ones have audio in them. But let's say I just took this clip and I copied it over. If we adjust the bar right here, it just adjusts it for this clip versus if I go over here to this bar, it does it for the entire audio track. All righty then. Then we have the metadata tab. I always want to say metadata, but metadata. You probably won't need to use this, but this just gives you some of the metadata for your clips, basically just the miscellaneous pieces of information that are in that clip. And then the last one, which is very important, is the inspector. The inspector is how we edit settings for individual clips. So let me use this as an example. I got to move Zoom over. So let's take this clip right here. Let's say, I don't know, I want it to be zoomed in a little bit. I can go ahead and click and drag on Zoom, bring it up, and you can see it moves the clip back and forth as I move my mouse.
How did you do that?
Right now, I'm just hovering over the number. I am clicking and then dragging left and right.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and you can actually see, since it's stacked on top of another clip, if I go ahead and zoom out, you'll see that other clip right below it. And then you can just reset it by hitting this little wheel with the arrow, and it'll reset it back to its original default setting. But we can do other things in here, like move the clip around. We can rotate it if we want to. We want to get fancy with it. And then there's other settings here. We have cropping.
Can you do a keyframe?
You can, and we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Sorry, Jeff.
You're perfectly fine. So here we have our cropping. We can crop left. We can crop right. You can get really fancy with this if you wanted to. Within the cropping menu, we also have the softness. So this is basically feathering that edge. So if it's at 0, you see it's just kind of this harsh line right there. But if we go ahead and up the softness, it gradually changes over. It just feathers that edge, makes it look really nice. And you can do that if you want to. We can also just disable cropping altogether. And then now any of those settings that we did do not apply. Dynamic zoom, if you want to get kind of funky with it, it just dynamically zooms the image. There's not much that you can change with this, but you can see here, and I'm actually going to lower this down. You can see it's just dynamically, it's just zooming out. That's all it's doing. And then if you hit swap, it'll actually just zoom in. So it just changes what the zoom is. Over here on dynamic zoom ease, we can change if it's easing into the zoom, easing out, or easing in and out. So easing basically just means it's going to start slow, it's going to ramp up to full speed, and then at the end, it's going to slow down to a stop. Generally, just looks a bit nicer than it starting and then all of a sudden stopping. We'll go ahead and leave that off for now. Composite mode, you most likely won't have to mess with this, but you can just change how it's composited.
What does that mean? What does composite mean? Exactly.
So it just changes how it's composited. So basically, some of these settings, for instance, I believe add, if you have an image, and if we do add, it's going to take some colors, I believe black mainly, or white, and it's going to make those colors transparent, and it's going to add it onto the clip below. This is generally another one of those, if you don't know what it does, don't mess with it.
But one way you can think about it, at least that helps me picture it, is compositing. It's kind of like how you're blending one or two more things together. This is really useful if you're trying to do like some sort of overlay effect. So that's why you saw in the different drop-down menu all these different options. So the different options are going to apply a different effect to the selected clip. You can get some really creative stuff out of it. Otherwise, it's going to look really, really funky. For example, I think, Jeff, you selected burn as one, so it got really, really dark. So it really depends on what you're trying to do with the composite tool.
Yeah, and this would mainly be used if you're doing compositing, which is a whole nother thing. But generally, you won't have to mess with this. Just leave it at normal. You'll be good.
Is composite mode congruent? Is it equal? Does it mean the same thing as alpha channels in Photoshop?
This is not necessarily, but this is where if you exported an image and you exported it without the alpha channel, so it was just black, it was like an image with a black background, you could change the composite mode to add, and it should remove that black. So that's what that
so
does.
It's more of an alpha channel that wants web colors, CMYK.
Not necessarily. I honestly cannot explain compositing that well, so I would actually go ahead and Google that one, because Google's going to give you a better explanation than I can give.
Okay.
Moving on to stabilization. So DaVinci Resolve actually has a built-in stabilizer. If your footage was like really shaky, you can go ahead and hit stabilize, and it's going to analyze the clip here. This is kind of a bad clip as an example, but it's going to try and stabilize that footage. And how the stabilization works is it's going to crop in on your footage a little bit, and it's going to try and track the image and edit it so that way it is just like completely still.
Yeah.
And you can change how much it's going to crop. You can change how smooth it is, the strength of it. And yeah, so lens correction, I've never messed with that. And retime and scaling. This is that section I was talking about earlier, where if you have a 4:3 aspect ratio clip and a 16:9 timeline, you can change how it scales. So if you wanted to crop, fit, fill, or stretch that image. And then, yeah, over here on the right, you have file, and this is where we have just some basic metadata stuff that we can edit. So this is that camera section. If I wanted to be like, this was on an X70, that's the camera that it was shot on. I can go and be like, it was shot number 2, take 3. I don't know. It took these people 3 tries to pour some hot water into a cup, whatever you want. Generally, in most simple editing applications, you won't need to mess with the metadata, but you can if you want to. And that is just purely for organization for you.
Keyframes?
Keyframes, yes. So we can do keyframes. So let's go ahead and say we want to do that zoom, but let's say we want to zoom in on this part of the cup. So if we just went ahead,
just real quick, for those of you that don't know what keyframing is basically you're telling the program a very specific command to do a very specific command at a very specific time. So it can get really creative. You're trying to like zoom in and then zoom out on something, dip audio, have it dip back up. So then this is what Jeff is going to show right now.
Yeah. So let's say we want to focus on this part of this kettle right here, right? So if we just zoomed in, it's going to zoom in right to the center. So one thing that we could do is we can go ahead and keyframe the zoom and the position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the beginning of my clip where I want the animation to start. And there's these little diamonds next to these settings. If you see these diamonds next to a specific setting, it means that you can keyframe them, which basically is going to change its properties over time. So I'm going to hit this keyframe here. So we're going to start with these settings. I'm going to go to the end of my clip, and I'll actually go just one frame back there. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and then we'll change our position. So that way we're zooming in on this part of the kettle. So now if we go ahead and scrub through, you can see we have that motion. I'll just let it play right there. So there you go. Now you've successfully keyframed a clip. You can edit where those keyframes are. On these clips right here, you'll see a little diamond underneath it. If we click that little diamond, it's going to show us our keyframes. It's kind of small, but let's say we wanted this animation to end right here in the clip. We can go ahead and click on this little diamond, and we're going to drag it over to our marker, and there we go. So now if I click play, it's going to be really fast. It's going to stop right there. And that's how you keyframe. It's really easy. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to our effects library here.
Can you show one more keyframe?
You can keyframe. You can keyframe as much as you want.
Can you show how to use yaw? Can you use yaw instead of
So yeah, yaw would be the same thing. Let's say I'm going to go to begin in my clip.
Can you reset your other keyframes and fresh?
Sure. Yeah. So now they're reset. There's no more keyframes here.
Okay.
If I wanted to do yaw, I could just click the diamond, go wherever I want to go, and change the yaw like that. So there we go. And that's going to be the same process for anything that has this little diamond, the little keyframe icon. You can go ahead and edit it just like that. Okay. So in this effects area, we have our video transitions. Cool thing in Resolve is if you hover over the transition and just kind of scrub, you can preview what it's going to look like before you even add it in. So if we do a blur dissolve, it's going to blur, bring in the next one. Cross dissolve, which is the default. Dip to color, it's going to dip to black and then come up from black. And you can change what color that is if you want to. Smooth cut, which is really cool. So smooth cut is the way that I have typically used it is, let's say you're doing an interview with somebody, right? We're doing this shot right here, and I'm talking, and then I mess up on a word. And so you go ahead and start from that word and move on, right? So now you have this section where you have like the mistake, right? You have the flub. You go ahead and cut that out, and you can actually just do a morph cut, or not a morph cut, sorry. Morph cut's what it's called in Premiere Pro. You can do a smooth cut, and it's going to actually kind of mesh them together, and so you won't even really know that it's a cut, if that makes any sense. So I'm trying to think of a better way to explain this scenario here.
Better you than me, because I've actually never used it. I've always just stuck with the cross dissolve or blur, or even dip to black or dip to color in this one.
So let's say it's like, hi, my name is Jeff. Okay, obviously you don't want to have the mistake in there, so you cut that little mistake out, and then you use smooth cut, and it's going to mesh those two parts together so you don't even know that there was a cut there. Actually, one great way that I've used it is if you have somebody and you want to add like a pause, right? So they're just standing there, they're saying their lines, and it's like, and thank you for watching, and there's a pause. And then they continue on with whatever they're saying. You want to make that pause smaller. So you're going to cut the beginning and end of that pause, put those two clips together. And you'd think because they're just standing there that it would just be seamless, right? But because they're standing and they're kind of moving, there's a little bit of a jolt, right? Where they're at one point, they're like this, and at another point, they're like this. If you do the smooth cut, it's going to mesh those together and make it so that way it just kind of looks like they're naturally moving, so you don't even know there's a cut there. I hope that made some bit of sense.
Someone said yes, that you're doing fine. Good job, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. And then we have other transitions here. Arrow iris, cross iris. I always think of Star Wars when we get to iris wipes because they always like to do the iris here. Anyways, and you have all these different effects that you can mess with. I believe some of these are specific to the studio version. If we try to crash zoom here, it's probably not gonna let me do it. But how to add a transition, right? We can actually just go ahead and click and drag. So let's say I want this cross dissolve. I don't want this clip to just cut like that. I want it to smoothly dissolve in between them. So I'm going to use this cross dissolve. I'm going to drag it over. And I'm going to put it over this clip. So now we have this little white area right here. This is basically the transition area. So once we hit that area, it starts to transition to the clip. You can change how long that transition is just by clicking and dragging the end. So we can have this be a super long cross dissolve, or we can make it super short, just like that. And then that's how you add a transition. Really basic. All right. Audio transitions, they basically are just fades, right? So if we wanted to fade between these two audio segments, we would just go ahead and do this crossfade just like that. And now it'll fade smoothly between the audio. Pretty self-explanatory. Titles. I love titles a lot. DaVinci Resolve comes with these pre-built titles that you can use. So let's say you wanted to do a lower third. Let's say I wanted the lower third right here. I can just click and drag, bring it over, and now we have this title. What we can do is if we click it, we go to our inspector up here under video, and we have some of these settings. So let's say the title, I wanted this to be, I don't know, put me. This is Jeff right here. And then down here, we have our other piece of text, and we can just do guy with kettle. I think that's how you spell kettle. Maybe not. Whatever. Guy, just guy. Let's do guy. And you can change different settings with these texts. So we can change what font. We can choose from a variety of fonts. Let's go to my personal favorite font ever, Comic Sans. That's a joke. We'll use Comic Sans. We can change the color. I want this to be blue. Yeah, okay. So now we got blue text there. We can change the size. We can make it really big. The line spacing, all of these other settings you can mess with. And some of them you can even keyframe if you really want to. So I can make it go from left to right, keyframe it, make it a little animation if I wanted to. And then I guess again for the subtext there, you can do the same thing. You can add things like drop shadows if like it's kind of hard to see this text right here, right? So what I want to do is offset the shadow a little bit. You can kind of see a little bit of black right there. I'm going to just adjust it. And then I'm going to also change the blur, maybe make it a bit more pronounced. And there we go. We have a little drop shadow there. The stroke, which is just going to be like an outline. You can kind of see it down there. Maybe if I make it, I don't know, white, see it a bit better. Or not. There we go. So you can see it makes the text a little thicker. And then the background, if you wanted a background on there, which looks really ugly with the way that I'm doing it. But you're free to make it however you want to. Another way that I can make this text fade on is not just with a transition. There's also this little white tab right here. So if I go ahead and click and drag this forward, this is kind of like fading it on. Let's make it a bit longer. So now it's fading on. It's basically like changing the opacity of that layer of that clip. So this is another way that you can quickly just fade on and fade out like that.
And a cool thing with this tool as well is that you can apply the same thing with the video and your audio clips as well. So if you want to casually dip to black or fade out, or even with the audio as well, you can do that.
Yeah, so if I wanted to in the audio, let's say at the end here, I wanted the audio to fade out. Now I could use that fade transition from earlier, or I could just simply click and drag that little white tab, and now the audio is going to slowly fade out.
And then you also have a second tab there, Jeff. I don't, if you hover back over the audio tab, you can do a hard dip, or you can kind of erase it as well. So you can change kind of like the dynamic effect of that.
Yeah, so instead of being a linear just fade out, you can make it so that way it's like loud and then it quickly just dips down, or any other way that you want it to fade out. Some other titles that we have here, we have scroll. Scroll is basically how you would do credits. You can add a scroll. I'm actually going to delete this clip. And actually, this goes to another point that I wanted to make about editing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this clip to make it shorter. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, which will be the blade tool. So I do that. It's going to cut where my red marker is, and now they are two separate clips. If I go back to my arrow here, I can select it, and then I can delete it. And let me bring in another clip here. Let's do this guy on the rock. He was very happy on this rock. All right, but let's say I'm not happy with this guy in the middle here. I want to remove this guy entirely. There's a few different ways that I can remove it. If I hit backspace, it's just going to, excuse me, throat's getting a little dry. It's just going to delete the clip. It's not going to do anything else. We're just going to be left with this black space here. And I could just click and drag this clip over, join the two. We're good to go.
Ripple? You mean ripple?
Well, so what I can also do is if I click it and then I hit the delete button, now it's going to automatically bring that clip down.
Isn't it called ripple?
It might be, yes. I honestly am not great with the official titles of
Have you seen that contour like joystick paddle for it for DaVinci Resolve?
I've seen the speed editor like control surface. Yeah. It's really cool piece of equipment, but no worries. All right, so what I can also do is I want to make this clip shorter. I want to start it to where his hands are crossed right there. One thing I can do is I can hit T, or the trim button right here. And if I go ahead and just click and drag, it's going to move it over and just kind of like slide it under the other clip. So that means I don't have to say if I wanted it to be over here, right? I could just click and drag like that. But now I have this space. So to quickly change that, I just go ahead and hit trim and move it over like that.
Jeff, let's go back to the whole backspace and delete function.
Sure.
So just some things to be aware of, like backspace, as Jeff mentioned, it literally just deletes that clip, but it doesn't shift the timeline over. Delete does that. That's a great way to just shift everything over. If you have like all these different layers and whatnot, it really makes the your workflow much faster. However, there is a potential hiccup that you may come across, and this is something that we haven't gone over just yet. On your timeline, you can actually lock down individual layers, so that way you don't mess with anything on there. Like it just locks them, you can't make any edits. And Jeff, go ahead and show where the lock tool is.
Yeah, so what I'll do here is I will add this nice video clip right here.
Yeah, so I think he knows where I'm going with this.
Yeah, so what you can do is there's this little lock track button. It looks like a padlock. If you click it, I cannot do anything to this track. Like I can't edit any of the settings. I can't do anything.
So then what's great about that is that if you don't want to change anything about that layer, you can't do it as long as that is locked. But let's say you did want to apply the delete tool to this first track. Normally it would shift everything over. However, if Jeff were to make a random cut anywhere, he just deletes everything there, and naturally things will shift over, but not track 2 because it is locked down. That can be.
Sorry, I just want to show versus if I just deleted it right here, it would shift it over or not. What it would do is if I did to trim, I believe it'll move it over like that. But if I didn't want to, I could lock it down.
Just do a blade, right? Just do a blade. You would just suggest to people who
yeah, if you don't want to mess with the trim tool, the blade is definitely the way to go. As you learn the program, as you get more comfortable, and as you want to kind of speed up your editing a little bit, this is one way that you could do that.
Can you show trim real quick?
This is just trim right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to select anything. You just do it like that. You just
trim. It's going to be, so by default, right, we have our little arrow selected. Trim is going to be this icon right here. If you hover over it, it'll display the text for trim edit mode. Or the shortcut is just T.
Over. Hover over.
Yeah, it's just going to be T for trim. And then you can go ahead and do trim as well. Okay. One thing that's also cool about the trim tool is, let's say I go over, this is a long clip. Let's say I just move it over like that, right? As long as we have space at the beginning and end of our clip, if I hit T and I just go to the center of the clip versus the edge, it'll actually kind of roll through the amount of footage that I have. So just a neat thing that you can do. If you're just doing basic editing, like I said, if you're not familiar with the program, I would recommend just sticking with the blade tool. That'll generally be really useful for you. Anything else that you wanted to cover in the?
No, that was it. I just wanted to just point out that the locking thing could affect how things shift over on your timeline. So if you have all your layers perfect, just make sure you don't lock anything down, because that can mean something gets left behind and you got to shift it back over.
Yeah. And then let's say we mentioned video tracks earlier. So these are your video tracks. What I can do is, if I take in this clip right here, I can move it up towards the top, and it's going to add it to a new track. And it's just going to create a new video track when I do that. And you can do that all the way up to, I think you said 2000, Dom?
At least for audio, yeah. I didn't say anything about video and the new features, but I'm assuming yes.
Keep in mind, the more video tracks that you add and the more videos that you have stacked on top of each other, the more that it's going to slow down your computer, because it's going to take a lot of processing power to deal with all of those clips and all of those layers. Anyways, I realized I never finished going over all of this stuff. So down here we have generators. Generators are just like generated effects. I mean, they're called generators. You most likely won't ever have to use these, but these are like bars and tones. And then we have this like textured background. If I wanted to bring this in, I can go ahead and change some of the settings on it. And as I change it, it's just gonna edit it and generate this this effect here. So if I go and play it, actually, it won't play because I need to do the seethe rate, which is then going to make it change. So just, you have a few of those effects that you can play around with if you want to.
Jeff, can you point out real quick how to do undo last action? The shortcut. So
undo, I've just been using Control and Z on the keyboard. You can also go up to, I believe it's edit, and then you can undo or you can redo as well. If you undid something that you didn't want to undo, you go ahead and redo it. All right, other effects that we have here. We have an adjustment clip. Now, adjustment clips are kind of like blank clips. They don't do anything. They don't have any looks to them, but they're almost like filters. So if I took an adjustment clip and I made that clip like black and white, right? It would make every clip under it black and white. So they're really good, just like blank clips that can apply an effect over multiple different layers. And then we have these cool fusion effects, which we cannot access because we don't have the studio version, so I can't go over them with you. But if you wanted to, and you did have the studio version of Resolve, you would have these neat little effects. Nothing groundbreaking, just neat little effects. All right, and then you have open effects. Open effects are kind of the main video effects that you might use, some of your basic effects, right? So we have a box blur. It's just gonna blur it, a directional blur, different types of blurs that you can do. Some of these are only available with the studio version. The most common one I think that you would use is a Gaussian blur. So if we put a Gaussian blur over here, in our inspector, we can change the settings by going to effects.
Radial.
And then we can go ahead and change just how much we blur our image. And the border type, by default, it'll probably just be on reflect.
Radial.
And yeah, and then we have, hold on. To delete an effect, I should probably go over that too. There is a little trash can right here that you can use to delete it. And then you can also just disable the effect with this little toggle right there. So if you don't want to delete it, like you might want to turn it back on, you're not sure, you can just enable or disable it. We'll go ahead and just delete the Gaussian blur right there. All right, and then you have these various other color effects that you can do. If you want to add some flicker, if you want to dehaze, which is in the studio version.
DOS.
Yeah.
Mathematician, scientist, kinda, because it's a blur. It's like an f-stop, you know, Transworld magazine, you know.
Sure. Yeah, so these are all of your effects, and most of them are only available in Studio. So this is like the main area where you really see difference between the standard free version of Resolve versus the paid Studio version of Resolve. You don't have a lot of these effects. You still have a decent number of them, a lot of the more basic ones, but some of the more advanced effects you won't really have. And some of these are just video effects to add some style to your image. And then some of them are effects to like fix things that didn't quite happen in production. So I believe there's an anti-flicker in here somewhere, for instance, which is going to try and fix any flickering that you had. There's noise reduction right here. Yeah, deflicker. And a lot of those effects are only going to be in the studio version. But if you fix those issues in production, right, you make sure that your lighting's great, that your camera settings are good, you won't need those effects anyways. So not a huge deal.
Keeper belt, Kuiper belt.
All right, and then just other random filters we have here, all things to make your videos that much more special. And then lastly, we have our audio effects. Again, a lot of these are just to enhance your audio or fix any issues that you may have had during production. But we'll go over that in the Fairlight tab. And I think that's all that I actually had on my notes in one way or another. On the timeline here, I can just go ahead and go over like how to navigate the timeline, because I know I've kind of just been doing that. So if I go ahead and use my scroll wheel right now, it's going to scroll on the part of the timeline that I'm hovered over. So over the video portion, I'm scrolling, and then I can also go over the audio portion, although there's no reason to scroll because there's only 2 audio tracks. If I click the middle mouse button, I can go ahead and drag and kind of scroll through the timeline like this. There are also these bars on the bottom and the right side that I can use instead of using those buttons on the mouse. So if your mouse just doesn't have those buttons or they don't work, you can go ahead and use these bars instead. If I hold Alt and then I scroll, it's going to make the timeline, it's like zooming out of the timeline, right? So now you can see more of the timeline versus if I hold Alt and scroll up, it's going to zoom in on the timeline. And then if I hold Control and scroll, it's going to do that same thing with the middle mouse button. It's just going to scroll left and right. I can also make my tracks bigger or smaller by going in between and making each one bigger or smaller. If it's like, I don't want to see this middle track, I'm done editing it, I can just make it really small if you want to. Over on each track, we do have disable video track. So this will just disable the video. It's as if you just deleted that entire track of clips, except you didn't actually delete it. So you can reactivate it if you want to. Kind of on the same vein as that, down in the audio track, Again, you can lock your tracks. You can also solo a track. So when you solo a track, you are only going to hear that specific track come through. It's like you disabled every other piece of audio except that track. And then you can also just mute individual tracks. I use these quite often. If I want to say, if I have like music and I have a voiceover, sometimes I want to mute the music so I only hear the voiceover. Sometimes I want to solo a specific voiceover. These are really handy when you're editing audio. And then, yeah, you also have your plus and minus up here. So this is going to be
your clip size. Those are your clips in there. Those are your clips. That's your tracks. Those are your audio tracks, but those are your clips. And that's your clip size.
Yes.
Well, I'm busy.
All right. And up here, you can turn off snapping if you want to. So by default, your clips are going to snap in place, right? So if I have it on, we're going to snap right there. It'll snap to the beginning of this clip. If I move it over, it's going to snap right there. You can turn that off if you don't want it to snap. If you really want to get precise with it. I've done that quite often as well.
Jeff, go ahead and show one thing you'll probably will do at some point in your editing work is that maybe you want to separate your video from your audio. Like you really just want the video, the audio is just like complete garbage, like you can't use it. You can separate the video from its respective audio track, and you can delete one, and you can separate them and mess with them individually however you want. And it's pretty simple on how to do that.
Yeah, so let's say I have this drone shot right here, right? This is an awesome drone shot, but let's say it was recording audio, so I'm just hearing the propellers going. I obviously don't want that in my video. If I just went down here, clicked the audio, and then hit delete or backspace, everything goes, the video clip as well. That's because by default, these two tracks are linked, or not the tracks, but the audio and its video are both linked. If you right click, you're going to see link clips down here. It's going to be check marked. If I click it, now I can edit these independently. I can move them around independently. And if I delete one, it doesn't delete the video. So that's really handy if you want to get rid of a specific piece of audio from a clip. You can also link clips together. So what I can do is if I wanted this audio to be linked with this clip, I'm going to click that. I'm going to hold Control to select both of them, right click, link the clips, and now these guys are linked together. If I, edit the front like that, it's going to move the audio as well. They are linked.
There's a lot in the right click menu.
There's a lot. And so yeah, in the right click menu here, you have various different settings. You can create a new compound clip, a new fusion clip. We're not going to go over that stuff today. Again, that's mainly with fusion, which we're not doing.
You can't dabble on compound clip. The simplest one. What is compound clip?
Compound clip is basically going to be, so if I select both of these and I do compound clip 1, it's going to combine those clips together into one clip, basically.
Can we see the night sky then? And can you press 1 or 2?
So yeah, so what are you talking about? Sorry.
I was just wanting to know the compound clip, how to do the compound clip.
Yeah, so you just select the video clips that you want, right click, and then go to new compound clip.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to name it and hit create, and it'll have that compound clip. It'll also be in the media pool up here.
I was wondering at the end, I was saying, can you scrub through it so we see, okay, yeah, there's the transition. Yeah, there's the end, in and out right there.
All right. What else? Some simple things. There's something else that I want to show you guys. Oh yeah, the clip color. So the clip color is really good for organizational purposes, right? So if I want to I want to know automatically what clips are like drone shots, for instance, versus what clips were not drone shots. I can just change the color to say, I don't know, I like orange, right? And now it changes the color down here to orange. If I wanted, say, I've got this audio right here. Let's say this was our music, right? So this is going to be our music. I can right click, change the color to violet. So now it's just a way for me to quickly identify what each piece of media is without having to click it to find out. It's just I can visually see, and that's personal preference. You don't have to do this, and you can come up with your own color combinations, right? If you want your audio to be orange, you can make your audio orange. You can also do that in your media pool as well, and just change it for that entire clip. The last thing that I want to go over in the edit tab here is setting in and out points. So instead of bringing your entire clip into the timeline, like right here, and then having to change, you know, I want it to start right there, and then I want to end it right here, you can actually change it before you even bring it into the timeline. So let's say I open up my drone shot by double clicking. I can be like, I want it to start, there's a little truck down here that you may not be able to see, but I want it to start right here when I see the truck. I can hit I for in, and then I could go, let's say I want it to stop right here because it's a really long clip, and I'm going to go ahead and hit O for out. So now I can click anywhere in the center, click and drag it down, and I'm actually going to delete this guy up here, and it only brought down the in and out points right there. So it's automatically just the length that I want it. Now let's go a step further. Let's say, remember before how we unlinked the clips and deleted the audio because this drone shot, you know, we only hear the drone and we don't want to hear that. We can actually just go ahead and click and drag. There's this little film strip icon right here. If we click that, drag it down, it's only going to bring the video down, not the audio. Or if it was a piece that I only wanted the audio for, let's say I recorded a voiceover, but I had video for some reason, you can go ahead and just bring the audio down. Really, really handy stuff. Makes things a bit quicker and a bit easier. And I believe that's, is there anything I missed on this page, Dom, that you think I should cover?
I guess one, because I'm thinking of other ways that might help you guys out in terms of like, why is like the video program like so slow? You can actually change the playback resolution of the video. So basically, like right now, you may not be able to tell, but right now it should be playing at full resolution in the program window. And let's say your computer is like really having a hard time processing it. It's like being really, really slow during the playback. You can actually just tell the program like, okay, instead of full resolution, let's do half or a quarter or 1/8. So when you're actually playing the timeline, the video quality is going to look less, but that is not going to affect the final product that you're going to export. It just makes it easier for your computer to process all those files in real time. So that should definitely help your workload.
Yeah. So what I did, sorry, the microphone just going up on me. If you go up here to playback, and then you go to timeline proxy mode, by default, it'll be off. And you can see, our clip here, it's nice and crisp. It looks really good. This is really nice stock footage that I found. But if I go ahead and change our proxy mode to, let's say, quarter resolution, like let's say this footage is just too good and it's slowing down our computer. It's making it stutter. We can go down all the way to a quarter resolution and you'll see now it looks ugly. Now it's all blurry. But this is just for the sake of editing. You're not actually adjusting the quality of the clip or the resolution. When you go to export, it'll export nice and crisp and clean. But just while we're editing here, it's going to make the whole process way smoother. It's not going to stutter anymore. And it'll make editing a lot easier. And you can turn that on or off at any time if you need to.
Yeah, this is really handy. Maybe not necessarily for 720 or 1080 footage that you recorded, but this is definitely going to help you out if you're recording, let's say, in 4K, 6K, 8K, if you happen to have that kind of footage, because that's basically 4, 6, 8 times the amount of data the computer is trying to process. So it will really help your computer process in the long run, just, lower the resolution or the playback, and, it should be much easier.
Yeah.
Can I share screen real quick, Jeff?
What's up?
Can I share screen real quick?
Not right now, no. We won't be doing sharing screens for the moment. But if you have a question, feel free to ask.
I just wanted to show my computer's 4K.
Oh, gotcha. Right. We're gonna hold off on that for now, but thank you.
I'm just.
No, you're good. All right, so we're gonna be done with the edit tab for now, and we will get to more questions at the end. So if you have questions about the specific area, we'll go ahead and get to that. But we are at a little over 1 hour mark, so I want to make sure we can get to the rest of this stuff real quick. So we do have the Fusion tab here. This is basically like the compositor inside of DaVinci Resolve. Compositing, meaning you're taking different elements and you're just putting them on top of each other, essentially. That's a very basic definition of compositing. We're not going to do much with this right now, but this is the area that you would do different visual effects if you wanted to. But if you did want to learn Fusion, I recommend just looking up some video tutorials on that, because even I don't know how to use Fusion that much. I generally use After Effects. But it is a very powerful tool that you can use. You might be limited in DaVinci Resolve's free version, but in the studio version, it's completely unlocked and there's a lot that you can do with it. Moving on, we'll go to color. So this is how you're going to do your color correction and your color grading. Color correcting, meaning that, you know, your color is wrong, right? You want to address your white balance. Color grading, meaning like you want it intentionally to be, you know, a bit more blue. Like, you know, like the Michael Bay movies, like Transformers, they're always very blue and yellow. That's like color grading. So this is where you're going to do that. So up here at the left, we have our gallery, which we'll get to in a moment. We have LUTs, if you wanted to apply a LUT to the footage. None of these are probably going to work that well. They're going to be really ugly.
That pops off the page.
And then we have our media pool up here to adjust specific clips if you want to. So here we also have our timeline. So this is like a clips only view of our timeline. It's going to take all of our clips that we used in our edit and put them just in a row right here. So up here at the right, we also have nodes. We want to have nodes enabled. This is kind of how we edit our color. And then we can even adjust our effects and other things like that. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to have our node here. So Dom and I, we talked earlier about how to best explain nodes. The way that I kind of explained it was that imagine this is like a beam of light, right? Which technically kind of is. Nodes are like different filters that you're applying over the lights. And so you can add more nodes and change their properties to adjust the image as it goes through over to the final product area over here. Does that sound about right to you, Dom?
Yeah, another way, it's probably not even as accurate. It's kind of like you're applying different layer of effects to the one clip. And you can actually thread the pieces together. Like you can create all these nodes and they're going to affect specific other nodes. Like, okay, I want this effect to go onto this specific node. That will inadvertently go to this one. It can get really convoluted, but basically just think of it as what Jeff said. It's just different filters to your one clip, and it'll just kind of like you're applying more creative effects to it. And then
I heard there were instructions. I heard Fusion is instructions.
Instructions? Can you clarify a little bit on that?
Instructions like in nodes, using nodes, instructions for nodes, like using the space bar and shift button at the same time, and hitting the, you know, that drop down menu when you hit space bar and shift at the same time on the
I'm not actually sure about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've only messed with nodes 1 or 2 times, and I haven't done any kind of specific instructions unless. Go ahead.
Can you go to Fusion real quick, Jeff?
We're going to stick to the color tab for now. We're going to, in fact, let's go. We're going to go and keep going just so we can get through all of the material here before we move on. So also you can imagine nodes like layers in like Photoshop or something, right? So if we want to edit the color on this clip, we really don't want to just put all of our color settings in one node. We want to build up these layers of nodes. So that way, if we decide that we made an edit that we don't like, we can just delete that specific node, and that's the only setting that changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to add node, if it loads, and I'm going to add serial, which is going to add a node right after it. So what I can do with this is, let's say I want this clip right here to be a little brighter, right? We have our color wheels down here. Now we have primary, sorry, not primary. We have our wheels, we have our bars, and then we have our log. These are basically just different ways of manipulating our color. One thing that is also good to have up is our vector scopes down here. So there's this little scopes icon. If we click that, you'll see our scopes, and we can change what we're seeing. I'm going to put it on, I'll probably just keep it on waveform here. So let's say I wanted to bring up the highlights of this clip. There's this little, it looks like a little scroll bar down here, like if it was a physical wheel. I can click and drag that, and you can kind of see the highlights of the image kind of going up. Or if I bring my shadows up, it gets really bright. This isn't the best footage to color correct or color grade, but you get the idea. This is how you'll go ahead and make your adjustments to the color. I can go ahead and change the saturation so it's more saturated. And I'm going to make this really ugly on purpose, by the way. I can change my shadows right here. Wow, look at this beautiful clip. I can even change the temperature, right? So I can go between like a warm temperature to a cool temperature. All sorts of things on the color menu. One thing is you can actually just kind of let the program do everything for you if you want to. So let's say I hate this node. I made it look really ugly. I'm just going to hit delete. It's gone. It's like I never did it, right? So let's go ahead and add a new node. I believe the shortcut is Control-Alt-S or Alt-S. Yeah, Alt-S. It will add a serial node so you don't have to right-click. But I can let DaVinci Resolve do all the work for me. There's this auto button right here, this A button. And it should, it's going to take a minute. It's got to process. It should, oh, and it might crash the program because it didn't like that. Oh, there we go. And it changed pretty much nothing because this is a good clip. But that's one way you can make auto adjustments. So it'll automatically raise your highlights, lower your shadows, your midtones, all of that sort of things. I will say, in my experience, the auto button tends to overexpose images. It tends to bring those highlights a little too high. But that is an option for you if you really wanted to. There's a lot that you can do in this page. And again, just like with Fusion, I recommend looking up tutorials on this page in particular because there's way more that you can do than what I can cover right now.
One quick shortcut. So let's say you have several clips that are more or less the same white balance, same color temperature, whatnot, but you only edited one clip. How do you match the other ones up? You can do the long way where you individually adjust like the shadow, the midtones and whatnot. A quick shortcut. Jeff, go ahead and edit this one clip, like go crazy with it, do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it like really red. I think the red just makes the fire look way better. Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't, right?
So a quick shortcut, like let's say he wants to apply the same exact effect to all these clips on that row. All he has to do is basically with the mouse wheel, he can click on multiple, no, sorry, you know where I'm going with this, Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah, go ahead and go for it. You can explain a lot better than me.
What you can do is you can do grab still. So I'm gonna grab this still and we'll see it over here in our gallery tab. Basically, what all this does is it is grabbing that still and taking all of that data. So now if I go ahead and go over this other image of the fire, if it wants to load for me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave. If I right click and I go to, where is the one that I want? Apply grade. Boom. It applies it to that clip, no problem. Now, let's say, I don't know, I wanted this grade to go over every one of these clips because I'm a crazy person and I'm, super awesome. I can go ahead and click all of these clips. I'm just holding control, by the way, when I'm clicking these other clips. I'm going to right click, go to apply grade, and it does it for every single one of them. That's a very quick way to apply the same grade over multiple clips. Some of them may need adjusting. I mean, now we're going into like how to color grade and everything, It's not as easy as just copy and pasting. You may want to go to each of these individual clips still and adjust them for that specific clip, but that's an easy way that you can do that. DaVinci Resolve started as a color grading software. So this is like some of the bread and butter of the program. So I highly recommend doing more research and learning how to use this interface, at least on a basic level, because there's a lot that you can do with it. Moving on, we'll go to the Fairlight page. Fairlight is DaVinci Resolve's audio editor. So just like the cut page mainly focuses on video clips, right? We don't really see much audio anywhere. The Fairlight page mainly only focuses on audio. And so a lot of these windows are just focusing your attention, right? So now we're really just focused on audio. I can have our media pool right here if I wanted to adjust specific clips in our media pool. The main thing that I'm going to have up is our effects library. And if you notice, we can only apply audio transitions and audio effects. So on here, I can add things like a multi-band compressor. I can add a de-esser, de-hummer. I can distort the audio. All of these effects mainly just help enhance the audio or help fix things that didn't quite happen during production. Like if it was really hissy, right, you can try and remove that. You also have audio settings right here that you can do. If I click this EQ setting, if I double click it, it should pop up.
You guys have audio little hubs for your tutorials on your YouTube channel. You have audio hubs, right, to go into input.
On our website, we do have audio tutorial, or not audio tutorials. We do have tutorials that go over not this in particular, but there are tutorials for various other topics. But I would recommend going to YouTube and looking up how to use some things that we're not covering here right now. But yeah, if you double click on the EQ, you have an equalizer right here. This can be really useful for boosting certain frequencies, taking out specific frequencies. And yeah, just generally, this is where you edit audio. Some main things that you'll probably use is like a limiter, right? So I can take this limiter, drag it over to a specific piece of audio, and then adjust those settings accordingly. And then I also have our inspector, remember, which is where we can edit some of these settings up here. So I can change the specific audio settings for this clip. I can lower the volume. I can change the pan, so if it goes from one ear or the other. And then each clip also has an equalizer that we can enable for that clip in particular. And yeah, this is the audio page. A lot of this audio editing you can do in the edit page, but this is really good for focusing your attention specifically on audio. Overall, just changing the interface to accommodate audio in particular. The last page that we have is the deliver page. This is when we're going to export. So now I'm happy with my video. I think it looks amazing. I mean, this is not the most beautiful video that you've ever seen in your life. I think so. Up here, you have different options for rendering. So custom is going to let you change all of these settings, right? So we can change our format. Let's say we don't want QuickTime. Let's say we want to go to MP4. I can go ahead and select MP4, and you have these various other options. Generally, you'll probably want to stick with MP4 or QuickTime. You can change the resolution of the final export as well as the frame rate. I recommend keeping those to whatever you selected way earlier in the process. So at the beginning of the project, when you change your settings up here, your preferences, I would just keep it at whatever you put there. We do have advanced settings down here that you can mess with. I know I never do, but if you know what these things do, use them. If you don't touch them. You also have your audio tab right here. You can change the audio codec for other, like if we have a different video format, we can change the audio codec. You can render individual clips, and you can select which of those clips you export, or you can even just do a single clip. You can actually disable video or audio altogether. So let's say I only wanted to export audio, right? I can enable audio and have video disabled. So now when I export, it's only going to export the audio, or vice versa. If I only want the video, not the audio, you can do that as well. Up here, you have YouTube. So this is where if you link to your YouTube channel, it'll export and I believe upload directly to YouTube or Vimeo or Twitter. You have H.264 master. This is a good like default template that you can use. But generally, these will also just be reflected in the custom settings area. And then other formats right here if you want to use it. So let's say I want to export this guy. I'm going to just go to custom. Let's make sure our video is selected. I want it to be an MP4 codec H.264. That's standard. Yeah. I'm going to, I don't know. Let's keep it at 23.976 frames. All this looks good. Audio's fine. Nothing else that we really need to do.
You don't go up to 60 frames?
I'm going to change the
frames.
What was that?
You don't go up to 60 frames?
You can. I believe if the video clip is 60 frames, but this one is not it. So
we're 60 frames. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So what I can do is I'm going to change the file name. I don't know. This is called Workshop. That's what we've been naming everything so far. And we're going to browse for a location. Just browse the desktop, and you can see the file name right there. Go ahead and hit save, and then down at the bottom here, we're going to add to render queue. So now we have this in the render queue. So the render queue is really cool because let's say you have multiple timelines, right? Whether that's multiple videos, different versions of the same video, and you want to export all of them. You can go ahead and add each one to the render queue. And then when you're ready, you can select all of your videos. So I don't know, let's just for the sake of fun, we'll do 24 frames. Boop. So now we have two jobs right here. If we select them all, I just held shift and clicked. We go render all, and it'll render each of those timelines. I'm not actually going to do it because that's going to take some processing power on the PC. But that's the render queue and the deliver page. You can also remove a job if you want to. So we'll just click this X if we don't want job number 2. Or we can edit the job with this right there. Let's go and cancel. And yeah, down here on this little timeline view, you can change the in and out point of the timeline. So if you didn't want to render the entire video, you just wanted to render a small section, you would use this to kind of crop your video and change how much gets rendered. And you can see right here, we have render in out range, or we can just do entire timeline. And that's the deliver page. It's how you export. And that is it. I know I went through this material really quick and I probably jumped all over the place. So now I want to open it up to questions to get your specific questions. What do you want to know? What did I miss? Yeah, have at it. What do you want to know? You can either type it in chat or just open up your mic and go and talk to me, or don't. Is there anything at all that you want to know?
I was wondering, can you export to a DVD? So say you edited a film with Joe and Sally's wedding for grandma to watch. She can't stream. Would that be the H.264? Would that be viewable on her standard DVD player?
You know, I'm not quite sure about that. I know to export to a DVD, you would just change this browse location, right? You would browse to your DVD writer, I believe. But I'm not actually sure about that. That would take a bit more research on my part to answer that. So yeah, sorry about that. I wish I had a better answer for you.
I posted my question in chat.
So he's asking, is DR a coding application? I'm assuming you mean DaVinci Resolve.
Yes.
Is it an encoding application, or?
I think that's what he's asking, yeah.
Encoding, like you can't live stream from it, no, but you can just export what you edit.
Scripting.
Oh, scripting. No.
Isn't Fusion have end script, start script, and in your settings when you go to
okay, I thought you meant like gotcha, scripting. You might be able to do it in Fusion, yeah, but I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't know much about Fusion because I use Adobe After Effects, so that's not really my domain, unfortunately.
You don't know if we can use Python,
I don't know. That would definitely be a good Google question.
From my experience with Fusion, I've never seen any kind of option that allows you to do that. It's more just general effects like nodes or other like inspector tools, things like that. Not that hardcore scripting.
I have a question. Now, once you deliver your final product, you can't go back in and re-edit it.
You can, yeah, you can totally re-edit it. So if you exported your project and you watched it through and you're like, oh, actually, I don't like that clip, I want to go back and remove it, you would just go back to the edit tab, make your edit, and then go back to deliver and re-export it. Yeah.
So once you deliver it, then that's going to be the file that you put back into it, and it'll separate all the clips again.
No, you won't have to put anything back in Resolve. You can just go right back to the edit tab. Like when you deliver, right, when you export, it doesn't like package everything together and then ship it off. It just kind of puts it all together, creates the video file, but everything else is still here. You can go back and make any changes you want. You would just have to re-export it.
Yeah, the exported file is where basically it's compressing all that data into one singular audio and video track. So if you try to edit that file to edit those specific clips, that's near impossible because it's all already together as just one individual clip like you've seen here on the timeline. So if you want to edit the project, just go back into edit, make your adjustments, and then re-export it as a brand new file, basically a brand new version of your timeline.
So you can see here, I'm rendering it out right now. I figured it's not going to be that long. So once it's done rendering, we'll have our video file on the desktop that we can watch. So now it's exported. There's a video file on the desktop. I believe that's where I saved it to. Yeah, we have our video file right here, our very beautiful video. That's the best I've ever seen. But if we go back to Resolve, we go back to our edit tab and still edit things, right? And then I could go ahead and re-export this section and have a new video.
Now, what if you close DaVinci out, and can you come back in and still access this?
Absolutely.
As long as you save it, yes.
Yes, and so so you'll want to hit save, right? Control S, or even just hold on, it's saving. There we go. File, and then I believe, where's it? Edit and save.
No, it's file.
There we go. Save project. And now it's completely saved. If I exit out of Resolve and then I go and open it back up, give it a moment. It's going to take its time.
Now, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not like Premiere where it has a default autosave setting, right? You have to manually save it. That's my experience.
As far as I know, yes. When you close the program, like let's say you hit that X button or you hit quit DaVinci Resolve, it'll ask you if you want to save it before you exit if you haven't saved already. So it's really difficult to accidentally quit out of Resolve without saving. The only instance is if DaVinci Resolve crashes, which can happen, so save often. But now we can see right here, we have our Resolve open, we have the project we were just working on, and it should load up no problem with all of the edits that we made.
Okay, I get it. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. A good rule of thumb or practice that I do is that, like, as soon as I made an edit to something, doesn't matter what it is. It can be a simple transition effect that I've adding a text, even adjusting the inspector tool for the specific text. As soon as I make an adjustment, I hit Control S constantly on the keyboard. And that takes like a split second to do. That way I'm telling DaVinci to constantly save my progress as I'm going along, because it does not have a default autosave feature the way Premiere does. That's one thing that's different, because in the event, like let's say you're 15 minutes into an edit, you have not saved your progress. If DaVinci were to somehow crash on you, or maybe you lose power, your computer dies, whatever the worst case scenario is, you're gonna lose that 15 minutes of work. So that's just one thing I would recommend, just constantly save as you're working on, so that you don't lose that.
Yeah, which goes for really, it's like if you were typing an essay, right? If you were typing your thesis, you want to save that often. Same sort of thing.
Can I do one more question?
Absolutely. What's up?
Can you go to Fusion real quick? The field, go to click on media out.
Where are you seeing that?
At the nodes at the bottom.
Oh, gotcha.
Click on settings over here by inspector. And there it is. Start your render clips. That's where it says start render clip scripts. That's the industry. I'm talking Tom Hanks and Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what I'm saying, that Python, I looked it up, and Python the programming language like HTML can work in there. That's
Cool.
all I'm saying. Just saying.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's honestly beyond my realm, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
Very neat.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
No worries.
Yeah. And any other questions you want to know? Anything I didn't cover that I can hopefully answer? DVDs are before my time. No, they're not before my time. I no, that makes me sound really young. But you know, I had VHS tapes growing up. Okay, I understand, but I don't know. I was trying to make a joke there, but it didn't work. Remember, you didn't come here for the humor, so.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no other questions. That's basically DaVinci Resolve in a nutshell. So hopefully everything made sense. It's basically these kind of workshops when it comes to editing. It's hard to really condense so much information and what's going to be really beneficial to you guys. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. As you guys saw, DaVinci Resolve offers a lot of great free tools in this version. And then if you want to get the additional features, that's just the paid version. We don't necessarily recommend that you do so. It's up personally, it's up to you what you want to do. It's a really great program. Jeff and I used the free version for I think a year and a half or two before we finally transitioned over. That was just us, the circumstances, but it's really great for what it is. And, hopefully you guys had a good time with this workshop.
Did you produce a tutorial on DaVinci Resolve?
I produce a very more condensed version of this workshop, just more of just introducing the program, like the user interface, where are your workstations, things like that. And that's on our website as well. But it doesn't really cover too much into depth, like the tools, the effects. I did not cover those in particular.
Yeah. And on that note of tutorials, if you do want to see more tutorials, one, on DaVinci Resolve, if you want to see more tutorials and you do want to learn more about the program, I would highly recommend going to YouTube. There are a ton of other tutorials by people who can probably explain this stuff way better than I can. And would definitely go over some of the more specific things that you want to know. But if you do want to see more tutorials by CMAC, you can go ahead and head to our website, cmac.tv, and you can find more tutorials on various other topics, not just editing, but video gear, video production, media literacy, and all of these awesome things that you should totally check out because they're great.
Yeah, and another thing too, I believe everyone that attends these workshops, you guys have the option to fill out a workshop survey. I think it's called an exit survey. So please fill that out at your own convenience. Let us know how we did with this workshop or any other workshop. Was there something we did really well? Was there something that we can improve on? Is there something that you would like for us to have discussed in general? Please fill that out so we have that information to basically, apply that for the workshops as they come along.
Yeah. And with that, I think, are there any other questions? I always like to leave it up one more time at the end here. We're going to close it out. Is there anything else? Anything that you are curious about?
I want to say thank you to both of you guys. I learned quite a bit. This is all brand new to me. My friend Natalie Nigg recommended this class, and I want to say thanks, guys.
You're very welcome. Yeah, and we're glad that you learned a lot from it. You had a good time, and this program is not really different from other ones out there. It's just your preference on what you want to learn, what you want to use. I always describe it like learning how to drive a car. Once you learn how to drive a car, you basically apply that knowledge to the next vehicle you get. So most editors basically do the same thing in terms of what they offer, but maybe the tool is called something different. So it's just little nuances here and there.
Yeah, and one of the great things about the program, if I didn't say it enough earlier, it's free. So download it, install it, and play around in it. Right, that's one of the best ways you can learn is just to play around with it. And yeah, I recommend you do so. If the other more expensive paid programs just aren't your thing, you can, if you are a CMAC member. I have to plug this stuff. You can check out some MacBook Pros here at CMAC, and they do have the full Adobe suite as well as Final Cut Pro. So if you did want to use those programs, we do have those resources available for you here at CMAC. But if you are not, in the Fresno Clovis area, or you just want to be able to edit from home without needing to check anything out, DaVinci Resolve is a great free program that you should totally check out. And yeah, highly recommend it. That's what Dom and I use personally. So, but I think we've rambled on enough. I could ramble all day. That's what I specialize at. So I do want to give a big thank you to all of you who joined us this evening for this workshop. And yeah, as Dom said, go ahead and fill out that survey if you so choose. Give us your harshest criticisms because we need it. And anyways, you guys are all awesome. And with that, have a good night, a good evening, and enjoy the daylight savings time extra sunlight, which is not out right now. It's probably dark right now, but tomorrow, enjoy the more light tomorrow. That's it. Have a good night.
See you,
All right,
everybody.
goodbye, guys.
Thank you, Jeff, and